everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Between Sermons, where we get to continue the conversation from our Sunday messages. As always, you don't have to have listened to our sermon on Sunday, but it would be nice if you did. But this week, we are continuing a series called At the Movies, where we're taking biblical principles, but we're illustrating them from some movie clips. And the movie this week was A Million Miles Away. If you've never heard of it, you're probably in good company. A lot of people hadn't, but it actually is a really cool movie, a true story of the first immigrant farmer turned astronaut, and it's a really cool story about Jose Hernandez and kind of his journey of success. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And opposite of me today, Tiheasha Beasley.
Yes.
How you doing? I'm
good.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You know, for the last several months, you've actually just been sitting right over there
on the other side.
on the
I'm
other
real
side of the
comfortable
camera.
now.
So yeah, so you're ready to go. And,
Yeah,
and you've sat in that chair before.
I was scared when I did it the first time.
Why are you scared to talk to me?
I was scared.
Is it me or is it the cameras?
It's a little bit of both, but mainly you.
I'm very intimidating.
You're intimidating.
I don't know how.
But now I'm not scared anymore. Jesus has set me free.
God bless that. That's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear.
Yes.
Did you see the movie?
So, no.
Did Sunday make you want to see the movie at all?
I definitely want to see it. It will be happening.
Yeah,
I'm going to see it. It was really good. I didn't know it was a true story.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, somehow this year I did 2 true stories.
Yeah.
And then next week I'm doing Spider-Man, which I
That
hope
is so
everybody
true.
understands is not a true story.
It's definitely true in my house. My son is like, Spider-Man, any DC or Marvel movie, that is real life.
Yeah, not so much.
Okay.
But it'll be a good conversation next week.
Yeah.
I won't be here for it, though. I'll be in Turkey.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
But,
okay.
Y'all have fun.
It'll happen.
Whoever's on the show.
Yeah. It'll be
Okay,
good.
so we're talking about success.
Yes.
And that was, man, it was such a good movie in that it really showed somebody's real life journey of what success looks like. And he had a lot of like ups and downs and rejections and failures and like the perseverance that he shows. And it's all kind of attributed to his dad gives him the recipe for success. They don't quite articulate it that way in the movie, but when you look into the story, like it was like this, if you want to be successful, this is what you need to do. And it gave kind of these 5 steps in the process. Ingredients is the way they put it. And what was interesting to me is as I was preparing for the sermon, it was like, is this really the recipe that we should be following? And it's funny because it's like, it's a good recipe. Like it does lead you to a place of success, but it's success in the world's eyes. Like it's the world's definition of success. And so the more I was thinking about it, the more we were talking about it with the team, it was just like that's not what we're supposed to be pursuing. Right? Like, so I don't know have you heard about like the 5 P's of success? Like it's something that I feel like every like self-help guru out there,
entrepreneur, expert,
all of those guys will coach you on the 5 P's, right? It's like it's position and power and prestige and pleasure and prosperity. That if you got those 5 things, like you have achieved success.
I guess.
You guess. I'm glad that you get, because here's the thing, like so many people have bought into that idea. That's what success is, right? If I've got the power, if I've got the position, if I've got the prestige, when people look up to me, when I've got the money, when I'm having a good time, when I've got the pleasure, like if I've got those things, then I'm successful.
Yeah.
You know, what's there's such an annoying guy out there that always talks about you got to be rich, ripped, and rare.
I don't know him.
You don't know him?
But
that's another one that
it's a lot of annoying, successful gurus out there that I'm just like, take some seats.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, it really feels like 99% of these people like won the lottery. Like it was just like a fluke accident that put them where they are, and they're like, here's how you can do it too.
I know.
It's like, no, that's
really,
not how that works.
The trick is, and I hope I don't offend anyone when I say this, but the trick is like, let me find a group of people who are kind of like insecure or dealing with imposter syndrome, and I'm going to sell them this dream. And then you guys are going to make me rich, and I'm going to become what I'm talking about. But they don't start off that way.
All you have to do is write a book on how to become a millionaire.
And you are official.
And then everybody buys the book and you become a millionaire.
Yes.
right? You could be broke when you write the book.
But that's a positioning strategy. Yeah. They got it down packed. Let me position myself as an expert and let these people fund my dream. Yeah. And it's sad.
But the great thing is that, like, when you become a true believer, when you start following Jesus, when you start looking at this, it really is the upside down world.
Yeah.
Where, like, everything that the world is pursuing, like, Jesus just kind of flips it on its head. And so it really breaks down, like, instead of power, right? It's like humility. Like, become a slave, become a servant.
The first thing you will learn.
Right. Yeah. You want prestige? No. Become the servant to everyone. Like, you want to be at the top? Okay, you got to go to the bottom.
Yes.
Like, that's how you're going to get there.
It's crazy.
You know, the world is like pleasure, and Jesus is like, crucify your flesh.
Consistently.
Right? Like, it is the just pure opposite of what the world views as success. And so that can be a really hard pill for some people to swallow, of like, how do you navigate that? Mm-hmm. So for you personally, I think that you've been in some worlds where, you know, the collective voice around you is this is what looks like success, or this is what success looks like. How do you kind of leave that behind and say, you know what, I don't really care about those things anymore?
I don't think it's a choice to leave it behind. I think it's more like God is calling you to leave it behind. Okay. I know for me, I did business for 7 years. I'm still in the business game, but he's shifting like my perspective on running my business. Now I'm also doing a job that I love here at CLC, and just balancing it in a more healthy way. But when I first started, it was 7 years ago. It was chasing the dream. Yeah. And so when I felt like God was starting to call me away from success, well, my idea of success, because at the time when I was chasing this, you know, building a company, having people work under me, being the it girl for book publishing, making a name, like all of that feels good to your esteem, right? And I had mastered kind of like making it all happen and look easy. And I remember out of the blue, business started to dry up. And I'm like, okay, start taking some hits to my pride. Like, how many people want to write a book this month? You know, you start doing these gimmicks to get more people to sign up with you. And it's really out of fear of losing everything you've built, and not just business wise, but your name, your credibility. You always are chasing the next win, the next high. And so I remember I was asking God, like, okay, God, what are we doing? Like, clientele is slowing down. I told my husband I would help a little bit with business financing. And so he was like, well, I want to start moving you into a different place. And so it didn't happen like this voice told me. It was like I had to start like discern that this was what was happening, because nothing had changed. Like, none of the formulas that I was doing had changed. I was still marketing and doing good work, in my opinion, with my books. It just seemed like things were starting to shift. Yeah.
All of a sudden, the stuff that was successful wasn't successful.
Working. Right. It wasn't working anymore. And so I remember actually being a part of a small group here led by Tiff Hines, one of our amazing. And I remember in the group, she was like, what do you feel like God is saying to you in this season? I said, I think that God is leading me to focus, like change my perspective on success and what that means and what he wants me to do. He's leading me into a different place. Yeah. And he started to break me of some things. It was a breaking. Yeah. It was like, who cares about your name? Who cares about what you build? Who cares? Like, will you give this all up to do what I'm asking you to do? Yeah. And so again, it wasn't oh yeah, you know, I'm a super safe Christian, I'm gonna give this all up. It was like, no, God is orchestrating things in my life. If I don't move with his currency, I'm gonna miss it and I'm gonna be struggling. Yeah. And so I'm thankful that I was able to see that clearly. Yeah.
And there's a danger in that journey for a lot of people, is that when your identity becomes wrapped in your version of success,
yes,
then all of a sudden when you're no longer successful in that thing, it is a crisis of identity. It's like, okay, if I'm not this, what am I?
Yes.
And so like we have to first and foremost, I think, form our identity in Christ.
Yes.
And so then with the successes we can celebrate. With the failures, we can still trust God. Like it doesn't rock us to our core identity.
Yeah.
But for so many people, when it is this, okay, I don't have the power, I don't have the prestige, I don't have the pleasure, I don't have the things that the world says I need. Am I a failure? What am I? And I think that's just, it's such a sad state for people to end up in.
Yeah. It is. I'm curious though, now being on the other side of it, I guess being a part of like ministry, and how do you balance, I guess you can answer this question, how do you balance like winning and losing as a believer?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So the funny thing is, this whole success thing is not exclusive to or this drive for success is not exclusive to the secular world.
Yes.
Like in the ministry world, in the pastoral world, it's like, okay, how many members do you have? How many people were sharing your sermon clip? You know, how many campuses do you have?
Right.
What, like, and like it's funny, like you'll go to like pastor conferences and stuff, and like the number one question people ask is, so how big is your church?
Woo.
Right. And so it's like, and you don't want to be the guy that has the lowest number there. Right. And so like there is this like push for success in the world's eyes, even within the church world. And it's like, I don't know, for me, like I got really fed up with that. I got really frustrated with that. And so I identify success, and I didn't really talk about this in the message, and maybe I should have brought this out, but for me, I connect success to faithfulness. So for me in this stage of my life, and I hope this will be the stage of my life for the rest of my life, success is simply faithfulness.
That's good.
And so if I'm doing what God has told me to do in the way he's told me to do it, that's success.
That's really
right.
good.
And so the results I honestly don't care about. Right. Because it doesn't matter if 50 people shared that sermon clip or 5,000 people shared that sermon clip. My success is not in how many people shared it. My success is, did I communicate the message that God gave me in the way that I was supposed to? Right. So, and with that, it actually carries out way even beyond just ministry. Like, am I faithful to my kids? Am I faithful to my wife? Like a successful marriage for me is I'm faithful to the promises that I've made to my spouse.
That's good.
And so like it carries through everything. So if you ask me, okay, Brent, what's success? It's faithfulness.
That's good.
Faithfulness to what God has called you to, what he's told you to do, what his word tells you to do. That's why in the message we keep going back to scripture. Right? Because we don't want the world's recipe. We want God's recipe. His recipe is found in the pages of scripture. And so am I faithful as a Christian to actually doing what the Bible tells me to do?
That's
right. James says, don't just be hearers of the word, be doers of it. Right. And so am I actually faithful to the call of Christianity, like the call of following Christ, when he says to love your neighbor, when he says to sacrifice, when he says to put me first in all things, like am I doing those things? And when I am, that's success. That's good. And when I'm not, that is failure. And look, the reality is, even as a pastor, I fail. Right. And so there is this, okay, what do you do when you fail? And so for me, that has to come back to, okay, I take that failure to God. Where it's like, okay, I blew it. I messed up. Right. And so like I've got to have accountability partners. I've got to have people. There's times when I have to go to my wife and say, I'm sorry, I blew it. Like I made this promise to you and I didn't fulfill it.
That's good.
I did this thing that I wasn't supposed to do, or I told you that I was going to do this thing and I dropped the ball. Like I failed that. And so you have to own those failures.
Be
and a lot of times,
and
a lot of times people will just try and like brush those off. It's like, I know that I said I was going to do this thing and that I didn't end up doing, but here's the reasons, here's the excuses. And I think sometimes we just have to own the stuff where we mess up. And so even for me, just being able to go to God and say, hey, I didn't do well in this. I need your help, because I don't want to always fail. Right. I want to succeed.
Right. And I think I love that you pointed out it's a journey, and you will fail, and there will be moments where you win. And so I don't think success is this achievable goal, like ding, 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 I've made it. It's going to be a constant thing.
Oh, 100%.
that we're striving towards. And like you said, being faithful in it.
Yeah.
And
here's what's wild about it is you can have successes and failures in the same day. Right? Like I can succeed in work and fail in family.
Oh, that's good.
In the same day. And so like if you're waiting for that one moment of success, that's never coming.
Never.
Right? Like or it's coming all the time. Like it's just a matter of perspective. Like how do you really look at it? But it's I don't have any goals in my life where it's like I can check that off and be like, okay, I'm done with that now.
You're breaking all of the rules because you're supposed to have a list and you're supposed to check it off to get to the.
But if success for me is faithfulness, then I guess sure there's some check marks there. But like right now we're in process. We're going to be launching a campus a year from now. And so there's a lot of things that we're doing, but that's just faithfulness. And so once that campus is launched, we can celebrate. Yeah. But that's not the end of the success. Like that's not the end of the journey. It's still, it's okay. What's the next thing that I need to be faithful for?
That's so true.
And so like I love Paul's writings when Paul talks about, I fought the good fight. Yeah. I kept the faith, right? Like it's like, okay, yeah, success is standing before Jesus and him looking at you and saying, well done, my good and faithful servant.
I did the assignments you gave me.
I did what I was supposed to do.
Man, that's so good. Man, I love that.
So we're walking through success, and it's a little bit different, and it really comes down to, and I kind of left this with the audience on Sunday. Really at the beginning of the message was, it's up to you to actually choose what's most important to you. Because for a lot of people, it still is the financial success or the acclaim, whatever that is so important. Yeah. And I understand that there's some real world to that, necessities, I guess I should say. Like you've got kids you got to provide for. Right. And so you want to set them up. Like I get that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. But in the season, are you more obsessed or more focused on what the world views as success or what God views as success? And they're not always compatible. In fact, and a lot of times they're not compatible. And so everybody listening, even to this podcast, has to make a decision today to say, what am I actually chasing after? Yes. Do I want the world to look at me and say, success? Yes. Or do I want God to look at me and say, success? Yes. And so I can't make that decision for anybody.
I think both can be done.
Sure.
And I think I loved your point yesterday, because at the end of your points, that recipe leads to a satisfying success. Yeah. You feel fulfilled in the things that God called you to do. And so I think what really breaks the mold of like chasing success is heart posture. So it's like you can still have a lot of the things that you want, like financial freedom. Yeah. People can know who you are if that's what you're aiming for. But it's like, what side of success are you on? Yeah. Are you chasing it, or are you just doing what God is asking you to do and he's opening doors?
Are you being faithful?
Right. Are you being faithful?
Yeah. Yeah, and even Scripture says, seek first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added to you. Now, does that mean you're going to have a Lamborghini?
No.
And, all this stuff? No. I mean, it could.
It could.
Like, I got a guy that I met that, man, I'm so jealous of his life.
We got to talk about jealousy now.
We really should. No, this guy literally had, like, family land in Texas.
Wow.
Like, that they just own this property. They discovered oil on the property, and the U.S. government came in, purchased the rights to the oil.
Wow.
And so now he gets a check from the government every month for a ridiculous amount of money. Like, ridiculous. And he literally has to do nothing.
Man.
He doesn't maintain the land. He doesn't contract workers. He does, like, literally, it is just, he can play golf all day, every day, and he gets millions of dollars.
Is he a believer?
He is.
Man.
And he's an executive pastor at a church, and basically he works for the church for free.
Man.
And he gives and he donates and he does all this stuff, and he is living an amazing life. I think he's got 3 daughters that he sent to college, paid for completely. Like,
man.
Like he's living like this amazing life.
Somebody in his life
all
did
because
it. Right.
somebody bought the right piece of land at the right time.
I'm even thinking somebody in his family.
Yes.
was in the prayer closet praying for some generations, like they will be set
free. Yeah, you talk about generational wealth. Like this dude is sitting on generational wealth. Until that oil taps out, there's money coming in for doing absolutely nothing. And I'm looking at that guy, I'm like, yeah. And he absolutely could be driving the Lambo.
Yeah.
He doesn't, but he could. Like, you know, and it wouldn't be like ridiculous. Like it'd be like 1% of his net worth.
Man. Well, that is
I need to buy some land in Texas, apparently.
I'm sitting here rethinking everything. I'm striving for the wrong things. I need some land.
Right? But what's cool is for him, success isn't even in all that. Like he views that obviously his life is easier because he's got all that money. And there's people listening to this are like, man, I wish I had something. Like I'm struggling here. But like he doesn't even view that part of his life as the success story. The part of his life that is success is that he's able to devote so much of his life to serving others. Yeah. Right. Good. And so it isn't even about like what he loves is the freedom that he has. Like he's working for a church that can't afford him. Man. Like couldn't afford to hire somebody of his caliber even. Mm-hmm. You know, he's got this military background, all of this stuff. He's got high level leadership abilities. Like the church he works for, they couldn't afford him. Wow. But they get his services for absolutely nothing because God set him up in a way that he can just give out.
I love how you said God set him up. And that is the piece I wish I could teach to entrepreneurs or people who are striving for success the world way, because God can set you up to where your toil won't be heavy. Yeah. You can work and do things. You can have more time to serve and more time to give. And a lot of times that makes no sense to us because we equate work with money. Yeah. We equate hustle with riches. Yep. And I think that was the turning point for me. Honestly, if I could share a little bit about how I remember asking God, because David and I do Grace Collective. And the biggest thing that we love about Grace Collective is just being able to mentor and bring up the Gen Zers and millennials. Like that's awesome.
So Grace Collective is it's a small group that's no longer very small, but it's a group of young adults.
Yes, it is. And we love it. And before we even launched Grace Collective, it was something that I felt we were called to. I would just end up in conversations with young adult, ladies, and we would just end up fellowshipping with them. And I remember asking God, like, man, I wish I had more time, because as an entrepreneur, you really lose a lot of your time. Yeah. And
because it's not a 9 to 5 job.
It's not a 9 to 5. It's a all day till it get done. You might have one day to rest type of situation. And I remember asking God, I'm not even making this up. I think it was like a Monday. I said, God, I need something to help me have more time to do the things that you're calling me to do in this season. A week later, the position I have was offered to me from this church that I love. We've been here for over 9 years. And I was like, what? I didn't strive for this. I didn't, pursue it. God opened the door. Yeah. And it was from a prayer of wanting to serve more. Yeah. And so I say that because so many times we're chasing the wrong things when God is the biggest strategist. He can set your life up so well that you will be like, I can't believe I have more time to be with my family or more time to serve the people I'm called to. And you will find so much joy and fulfillment in doing that. And still God will provide in ways you never could imagine. And so I'm always encouraging my sisters now that I, have been in a relationship with since entrepreneur days. Like, I see that you're striving and it's pretty obvious. Like, you're posting things that's not even related to what you're supposed to be doing. It's like, what is the TikTok dancing? And you feel called to mentor or you feel called to women. How is it to make it make sense? And so when you're striving for something, it's because you don't trust God. Yeah. And we can say, oh, I trust God. We can sing the songs like, I trust you, Lord, all of that. But really your actions are showing I trust me more. Yeah. If I do this more, if I show up more on social media, or if I go out in the streets and do this, I trust me more.
Yeah. We talked about that with anxiety. Like the more anxiety you have in your life, the less you're trusting God with that area of your life.
Oh my gosh.
And anxiety is a real thing. Like it's gonna affect us. But how quickly can you take that anxiety and say, you know what? I'm going to cast my cares on the Lord.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to take that anxiety to him in prayer.
Yes.
And I'm going to trust him. Because honestly, like we used to, our staff meetings, I think they've changed the name of it, but I used to call it anxiety killers.
Oh, wow.
Which was at the close of our staff meetings, we would have prayer requests, which is what it was. But really what it was based off of is the scripture that says, to pray about all things.
Yes.
Right? And to take our anxieties to God in prayer. And so for a lot of us, anxiety in an area, especially when it comes to work and success, and it's like, but if I don't grind, if I don't push, if I don't do this, then I'm not going to have this. And it's like, whoa, calm down.
Yes.
Just breathe, relax,
oh my gosh.
Trust God. Yeah, you're going to have to work, but you need to spend time with him. Listen to what he's telling you to do, and then be faithful to whatever he's telling you.
There go that faithfulness
Come
word.
on now. We're going to tie it back in.
We're tying it back. We're going to create a t-shirt. It's so funny. I was talking to our counselor here at CLC, Kiana, and she was telling me and one of the other staff members here that there was a group of 15-year-old girls she was like counseling who had panic attacks because they didn't know what they were going to be at the age of 30. They're 15.
Yeah.
But it was some assignment given in school that was like asking them to think about
them.
And they had panic attacks and they started to become depressed and overwhelmed thinking about who they were going to be at the age of 30. That is how our society is set up now.
Which is can I just say that's just hilarious because like when I turned 30 I was like, what happened? Like how did I get here? Like
how did I get
and I'm thinking back of when I was 15, like I wasn't thinking about those things.
About 30. You hear me?
30's coming either way.
It is. But it's so crazy. Like it shows how our society is just so different. There was a Instagram meme that went out that said by the age of 12 you should have 10 streams of income. I'm like
at 12?
At 12, 10 streams.
I needed to tell my 12-year-old to kick it into gear. He's got 0 streams of income.
No, he's secretly working because that YouTube page that they're building, you start getting paid after so many views. So they are putting in work.
I think he has more subscribers than CLC does. Like he's been working it. Those little
we need to bring
those
them
little soccer reels and stuff. I don't know what's going on there.
But
our children need help.
They need help. But it's like we are laughing, but my fear, because now I see it in my son sometimes, where he's on the basketball team, and if he doesn't make a shot, it's not like, oh, I'll get it next time. He's crying. And he's breaking down, and I'm like, why are you so frustrated? Well, I want to make it to the NBA. Are you kidding me? Like, okay, surrender that thought to the Lord. And I do pray, if that's your dream, you make it to the NBA. But why are you so frustrated with yourself at 12? Because you missed a shot, because somehow this is setting the tone for you not making it to the NBA. So it's like very concerning. And just think about if our children are dealing with that. First of all, where are they seeing it at? Where's that pressure coming from? And the next thing to think about is like, what are we dealing with as adults? We're having too much anxiety. Like, I know it happens, but I feel like there's something happening that we need to stop and look at. And I really think it's the striving. It's the perceptions we have about success. It's being let down because we have this vision of, what we think God showed us about our life. And I say what we think because sometimes I'll be like, God told you that? He told you that you weren't supposed to care for the people in your community, but you're supposed to be speaking to millions. So he told you to skip from the people in your community to speaking to. This is the stuff. Make it make sense to me. Make it make sense.
So ultimately, we have to decide. Okay, it's the balance between our desires and faithfulness. To tie it back in. But no, so like, is it wrong for Neo to desire to be a professional NBA player? No, in the same way, my son. So your son wants to be NBA. My son wants to go play for the Premier League in soccer. Like that's
I hope
his
they make
ultimate
it,
dream.
so we can be there.
Man, I would love to support my child in that.
Right.
But what I want to make sure is that anybody listening, like having desires is not wrong.
Yes.
Right. Like just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you have to be broke and busted.
Right.
Like you can have these dreams and stuff.
Right.
But do you submit them to the faithfulness piece? Like
so good.
if God were to speak in your life and say, Neo, I love that you want to play in the NBA, but I actually have something different for you. Can you accept that and say, okay,
that's so good.
I'm going to lay that aside, even though that was the thing that I was chasing after. I'm going to lay that aside because I want to be faithful to what God has actually called me to. And, you know, for a 11-year-old or a 12-year-old, that might be a little tough at this stage.
Right.
But if you're 35 and you're listening to this and you still are like, man, I'm chasing the president, of the company, or I'm chasing, the VP status or whatever. Like, can you actually submit that thing to just being faithful to God? And if God wants you there, awesome.
Yes.
But if God wants you somewhere else, will you accept that?
Yeah.
Will you surrender to that? Will you say that's still success? Right? Because my definition of success should be God's view of success. And so I guess that should take us into our recipe. I know you got a hard out today. We got 24 minutes before we got to get out of here.
Okay.
So
unless we want Neo walking.
he can, hitchhike his way back to the house.
Take that up with David.
So the movie gives this recipe of what success is like. The Bible gives us a different recipe, and honestly, that the biblical recipe for success, I probably could have had 52 points for it, but we narrowed it down to 5 things: that you'd be holy, that you would be planted in the house of God, that you would persevere until the end, that you would serve everyone. And that you would change somebody's eternity. That if you pursue those things as ingredients, then you do find success in God's eyes, because these are each things that God tells us to do. Yeah. Right. And so I want to start with the first one about holiness, which we talked a little bit about it in the message. That holiness, even just saying it right now, there's somebody listening to this podcast right now that just got the shivers. Right. Like it was just like, oh, that word. Right. Like it's just like, because like there's a holiness movement that I think we both grew up in. And so like, it's just, it can feel like, holiness.
I do not measure up. Right.
Yes. But the reality is, so the word holy simply means to be set apart for honorable use, is the full definition of holiness. So to be holy means to be set apart. And we kind of talked about a little bit this idea of camouflage Christians. And I didn't share my story in that.
You were a camouflage? No, just
100%. So here's the thing. Up until 18, like that was my reality.
Wow.
So that's how I can identify it well, is because I see myself. Okay. And so for me in high school especially, nobody knew I was a Christian, let alone that I was a pastor's kid. Like, no way. It was actually, I think it was my senior year in high school. I was sitting at the cafeteria with a friend, and we were talking about what's going to happen after high school. And like they were asking me, what I was going to do. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like I looked at, I talked to the Marine recruiter, and I did this and that. And I'm like, I might do like a university in Michigan. My mom was from Michigan, and I liked U of M. And so I was like, maybe some computer programming. And then I was like, and then there's this like this church internship thing that I'm looking at in Colorado. And he was like, what? And it was one of those moments where like I was just, I don't know if I was tired that day or what, but I was just kind of rattling out, and it just slipped out. And he's like, whoa, a church internship? Like, why would you intern at a church? Like, what does that even mean? And I was like, and like I tried to like explain the program in a way that didn't make it sound churchy. I was like, well, like there's this thing in Colorado that teaches like leadership stuff, and like you climb mountains and like do all this stuff. Like I tried to like smooth it out,
make it seem cool,
which it was all true.
Mountains.
We climbed mountains and stuff. Okay, but it was like the first time this kid ever even heard anything about me being remotely a Christian. And then like he started asking more questions, and I was like, man, I don't want to lie. And so I'm like, well, yeah, like my dad's a pastor. And he's like, what? Like crazy. It just blew his mind because I had camouflaged. Like I said the right things. I remember I was in grade school and somebody was like, man, how come Brent never cusses? And so I like rattled off every cuss word I'd ever heard in my life on the playground that day.
Can you do it for us now? I'm just playing.
I was about to reference somebody that no, okay. I'm not going to be that guy. But no, so it was like anything that somebody said, there's something different about Brent, which is what's supposed to happen when you're a Christian. Like the world is supposed to look at you and go, there's something different about you. Like everything that was different about me, I tried to hide or mask so that I could fit in. Like I just wanted to be a part. Right. I didn't want to be the outsider. I didn't want to be the weird kid. Yeah. And part of that was, so like, this is way too much information probably, but like, my family was part of the United Pentecostal Church when I was like 4. Wow. We left when I was so young that like, I don't remember it at all. Yeah. But part of the rules of that denomination is women couldn't wear makeup, cut their hair, or wear pants. And so my sister, who's like almost 8 years older than me, like she was in junior high school, and she was known as the weird girl with the long hair, like the hair that went past her butt, and always wearing a skirt. Like it's like no matter what, she's in a skirt. Like she was the weird kid.
She was that girl.
Yeah, she was that girl.
I remember girls like that girl.
You had some of them. And so when you talk about holiness, like they're like the holiness
That's
people.
What you, yes.
But honestly, like, for me, it was like, I don't want to be that. I don't want people to look at me and be like, oh, that's that church person. And now, like, honestly, my greatest regret in life is who I was in high school. That I feel like it was such a lost opportunity. Because since that day until now, I've never been in that environment again. Where I'm surrounded by people every single day that need to hear the gospel. Yeah. Surrounded by people that need to know that Jesus loves them. Yeah. And I've shared this story. I don't know if I've shared this on the podcast before. I've shared it from the pulpit before, but and this probably jumps us all the way to recipe or ingredient number 5. Okay. About changing somebody's eternity. But in my math class, my junior year, we sat in pods, so they would have 4 desks all facing each other. You'd work in groups. And the kid that literally sat where you're sitting, like he was just straight across from me, he was a class clown kind of kid. Like every time he'd come in, we would just crack jokes. We'd talk about girls. We'd talk about sports. We'd just cut it up. Yeah. Every day for the entire school year, all the way till spring break. We come back from spring break, and that chair is empty. And I'm like, that's... yeah, no big deal, sometimes he's there, but I was like, man, I kind of miss the guy that I get to joke around with. And then the next day, the seat was empty again. And then the principal came into our classroom. I was like, this is weird. And he made an announcement to our class that he had committed suicide.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was like, when I say like my greatest regret is that I was a camouflage Christian, because I thought back of every conversation we had, every time we talked, never once did I express love from God, that this life had meaning or purpose, or that there was something bigger than what's going on. Never once did I hear about the trauma that he was going through at home, the things that were going on. Like, it was all sports and girls and jokes. And I feel like if only I hadn't been camouflaged, maybe, and I don't know, maybe he would have rejected it, but if only I hadn't been camouflaging my Christianity, my faith, what if I had presented a way out for him that wasn't suicide? Man. And so when I talk about regrets and mistakes and like, to me today, being a camouflage Christian is almost like the worst sin you can commit. To have the hope of the world within you, to have the light of Christ within you, and to hide it, to not allow anybody to see a glimpse of that, when you don't know what your coworker's going through, when you don't know what your neighbor's going through. And if only they knew that there was a God that loved them, that cared. If they just knew that there was hope in every situation. But we camouflage and we hide.
I think that you answered number 1 through 5, not just not just the first one, but like how does this relate, like holiness relates to like success or where you are being planted. It is being yourself, being who God created you to be in whatever space he put you. And if that is the world, like being in the world and having these different marketplace positions, it's being a believer, being holy, not giving people reason to find fault within you. Like that's why that's a big part and maybe the foundation to what godly success looks like, because it's like you're being the light where you are.
Yeah. I'm curious from your perspective, has that temptation to hide your faith ever been there, or you always just been like this is who I am? Yeah,
I feel like it's been a part of my this is who I am without me even stating. Like when I started November Media Publishing, it was never supposed to be a Christian publishing company. Mm-hmm. It was, if you know anything about like marketing or positioning yourself, the reason why people started to identify me as a Christian publishing company was because of how I put out content. Okay. So I would mention God or talk about, different book projects, and it was all Christian based. So people just started to identify me as a Christian brand. Yeah. And so I never had that problem. The only time I would say this is where it took place for me, when holiness had to be like a factor. When you start in the world of like building businesses and brands, there's this like mean girl or I don't know if guys deal with it, where it's like competition starts to happen and like who's invited to the conference to speak, and you start you start looking at the people who are invited to the table and you're like, well, okay, they dress in they might dress in modest, like they're wearing a suit without a shirt. Like, why would you show up to a conference with a suit on without a shirt underneath? That's a whole nother conversation. But I used to.
That's not holiness. That's
not
for sure.
holiness, but this is the standard at this point. They're like talking about I'm successful, I'm powerful, but it was just weird. Yeah. So I would struggle with like, should I start showing up like them? Like, should I do all the things that they're doing to garnish this attention to be invited to the table? Yeah. So that's when the holiness standard has to, it came into question. Like, do I start to compromise in some areas so that I could be invited to the conference to speak? Or do I just stand strong on my convictions and give God the glory and just hope that he creates space?
That's part of the temptation for a lot of people, and especially in like the business world, where it's like, okay, everybody else is cutting corners here. Yes, I could cut that corner and make more money. Yes. Or, am I going to be truthful in this? Am I going to be honorable with this, even when everybody else is doing it too? Yes. Yeah, it's tough.
So I think that's where, as a believer, we have to practice holiness. Yeah, it's not even in just I'm a Christian. It's in everyday decision making. How are you treating people? Is your customer service good? Are you putting others before you, even in your business? Are you honoring your clients by turning in the work on time? Like, I think the other coin to the camouflage epidemic is we have a lot of people who say they're believers and they're not, because it's showing in their actions. And so I think we just have to just be careful there, because it's a thin line.
Man, I feel like that could be a whole nother.
That's a whole nother
podcast.
It is.
Man, I would love to get into that sometime, but I know you got 12 minutes left.
I feel so bad. I'm like you're good. Guest that you're like.
No, we've had others.
She doesn't even have time. No.
I had heart out one time, so like I get it. Okay. I totally get it. So all right. So recipe or ingredient number 2 of the recipe is being planted in the house of God. Yeah. I'm curious from your perspective, as a member of the church. Now you're on staff, but for almost a decade, you're a member of the church. Yeah. Have you seen how just being a part of a church community has added to maybe that more biblical view of success? Maybe not that it's advanced your career, but it's like, no, this is actually helping me in that. If we go back to our word, faithfulness, right? Being a part of a community has actually helped me become more faithful to God in these things. Yeah,
it keeps you grounded. You have community, you have accountability, and you have people to help you, like, on the journey. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing for being planted. If no one gets to know you and you're hopping from place to place or whatever, and you're not planted, how can people know how to serve you?
Yeah.
You know, like how can your pastors or your leaders? A lot of people say, you know, I don't feel like my pastor or my leaders know me. Well,
yeah.
Are you planted?
Yeah.
You know, do they have the opportunity to get to know you? Yep. Or have you just decided after 3 years, since no one has moved you to wherever you want to be moved, like it's time to go, you know? So longevity creates an opportunity for people in your church to get to know you, for people to get to know your family, for people to see, like, come into agreement with your vision for your life and like help you develop, because there's so many tools and resources within the church where if there's an area that you're looking to grow in, there's someone who's already been there and they can pour into your life in that area. When you are on the race and on the journey, like, I don't know if I can do this, people can see that. And not just when you're like, oh, how are you? Oh, I'm good, blessed. They can see through that. And they're like, no, come here, sis.
Let's go talk.
Right. Yeah. So being planted is so important when you're pursuing, or just, I guess, a part of this recipe of success.
And honestly, I think that may be what some people need to hear the most. Is the illustration in the movie was the school teacher's like, okay, you're migrant farm workers, which means you are traveling to wherever the next farm is.
Yes.
So you're never staying in one place. So she's talking about his son, saying, hey, what would happen if you had a tree and you planted it, you dug it up every year and then replanted it every year? Well, what happens in that is the roots don't have a chance to grow deep, right? And so you're killing the tree or coming close to it every time you're uprooting it. I think that happens to a lot of believers when they just church hop.
Yeah.
Right? Or like they've got, oh man, I love these 5 churches. And so I just kind of, I get, you know, I love the worship here. I love the teaching here. Sometimes I like this one over here. You know, this one's really close. So if I'm running late, you know, I'll just go to that church. And they never actually get planted in a place. You don't have a chance for the roots to go down. You don't have a chance. The root system is where the nutrients come from.
So good.
That's where the growth comes from. And so as believers, you know, that's why I love pulling up scripture that talks about being planted in the house of the Lord. That's not a pastor thing. That's a God thing, right? That's biblical, that you're supposed to be planted in the house. So caveat to that, I'll say CLC may not be the church for you. And you know,
you feel good saying that?
I feel totally fine saying that. Look, CLC, we had a slogan a while back that I'm glad we changed because it felt a little weird, but it was like, we had some consultants come in and they experienced CLC and they're like, man, this is just a real different church. And so they use that as our slogan. Like, it's a real different church. And
I'm glad we changed.
Yeah. So, but it's part of how we came to our mission statement of we're here to change the way people think about church.
Yes, that's good.
Because that's what people were experiencing. They're like, this is different.
Yeah.
But because we're different, that means we're not for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, like we're trying to bring in people on 2 opposite extremes into one place. And so, like I was just telling our worship team the other day, I'm like, look, CLC is not gonna be for everybody. We're gonna be way too charismatic for some. And not nearly charismatic enough for others, right? And that's a weird problem to have.
That is, but right? I agree. That's the truth.
Yeah, 100%. It's just who we are.
But it makes sense. It's good.
And so saying all that to say, like, if you've been coming around CLC for months or even years and you're just like, no, I don't think this is it. Like, I would rather you leave here and get planted somewhere else than to just remain a visitor.
Yeah.
Right? Like it breaks my heart when like somebody will ask me, I'll try and find somebody on our church database and I'm like, they're a visitor. Like their status is still visitor. And yet their first visit date was 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Like, in 3 years, you didn't commit? Like, why are you still here? Like, I love you, but either commit or move on.
Right.
But the value here is not that you're planted at CLC. The value is that you're planted in the house of God. So find a church where you can be planted in.
Yeah.
And if we're the right church for that, awesome. I would love to be your pastor.
Yeah.
If we're not, then you're robbing another church of what God has put in you. And so find the church where you can be planted because the important thing here is that you're planted.
Yeah.
Don't just wander from place to place and church hop and church hop and church hop. I think it's devastating. And it's funny because I think it's kind of an American problem.
It is.
I don't think internationally we run into that nearly as much. Like people just, they find a church and they're committed.
Yeah.
And I think that probably was the case years ago. Like there's times when like somebody comes to CLC and they're like, yeah, I was at my last church for 35 years. I'm like, I love hearing that. I hate the fact that you had to leave.
Right.
And everybody's story is different,
Yeah.
and why they leave and what happened. I get that. But
Yeah.
I love hearing people talk about, I was at that church for 35 years.
Yes.
I was raised in it. My roots are deep into it. Like that just, as a pastor, that just makes me happy.
Yes.
All right, you've got 5 minutes.
Man, okay.
Okay, persevere to the end, because if you give up, you're not going to succeed at anything ever. Like quitters never win.
They never.
Right? It's just true.
Yeah.
Serve everyone. You can't read the Bible without becoming a servant. Like Jesus just flat out says, be a servant. Like, okay. And then we're changing somebody's eternity. We kind of already touched that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like that's the ultimate goal.
Recipe.
Any last final thoughts, because we had to rush this one, but last final questions or thoughts or ideas or
Yes. So one big one that I'm going to conclude with, but while you were talking about being planted, the word commitment and faithfulness kept coming to my mind. So I think that's a real thing, even being planted during difficult seasons.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it is difficult seasons, but me and David went through a difficult season here. We overcame it, and it feels like family.
Yeah.
You know? So I just wanted to throw that in there. Like,
and you need to be planted in order to weather storms.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like we had some plants on our deck that are in like these little shallow pots, and a bad storm came through. Them things just got trashed. They gone.
Man.
But plants that were in our front yard that were actually there for a while, deep roots, like that storm came, no big deal.
Yeah.
They're fine.
Yes, and they're thriving in the sunshine. And so it's really important to stick it out in every season.
Yeah.
And the last thing I wanted to end on, because this stuck out so big to me in the movie, and I think it's the key.
Okay.
I think, see, you had the top key. I'm going to close with the bottom key.
All right, let's do it.
So there was a part in the movie when his wife was laying in the bed, and he was kind of sitting on the edge of the bed. And she said, you just keep saying, I, me.
Yep.
And the next day he went out and he saw this restaurant. It may be the way the clip was set up, but he went out, saw the restaurant, and he bought it for his wife. He helped his wife fulfill a dream that she had. And
there's actually a lot that happens in the movie in between that. So when you watch the movie for real, you're going to be like, how did that? Yeah, we had to get creative.
Well, it must have been a God thing that I saw these two clips back to back. But I definitely want to watch it. But what I got from that was the serving others piece. When you are on this journey to pursuing whatever you feel like God called you to do, like, it is not wrong to have those desires. It's who you become in the process.
Yeah.
And his wife, clearly was suffering from like feeling neglected or not him being present even when he probably was in the house. But the moment he did some reflecting on what she was saying, and in my mind, I feel like he repented, even though he probably didn't in the movie. I don't know.
No, he really did.
Oh,
like,
okay.
He recognized that there's a lot.
Dang it. Now I have to go watch it tonight. But this is what I got from that was when he died to himself.
Yeah.
Like the last scene right after him getting that restaurant for his wife was God allowed him to get the thing that he wanted.
Yeah.
He was able to step into the position as an astronaut. What? Astronaut. Yeah. I know how to say it, guys, but I don't know. I'm in the spirit with
podcast
this
moments. We forget how to pronounce all kinds of things.
I'm just really passionate about this piece, but it reminds me of us. When we consider others and when we die to ourselves and when we acknowledge that, man, even though I have these dreams and these goals that I'm pursuing, where's my heart in it, right? Having this self-awareness, repenting and getting back in alignment with what God has called you to do. Yeah. I believe it will open the door for you to do the things that you would want to do. I think this whole journey of pursuing success is a way of sanctification as well.
Sure.
Like God is going to begin to reveal things to us about us. Yeah. He's going to use our loved ones to put a mirror in front of our face and be like, hey, you're dealing with this pride, selfishness. It's how we respond to that.
Yeah.
Not the things, you're going to have moments where you fail. You're going to have moments where you make mistakes, where you do consider yourself more than others. But how you respond to that is how you get over that hump where God is like, she's ready. He's ready.
Yeah.
And so I really want to encourage people, like, as you are pursuing whatever you're pursuing, make it a God dream.
Yeah.
Surrender it to him. And you just will be so surprised how he's going to allow things to unfold for you. Yeah. Check your heart consistently. Like literally lay that thing at his feet and ask him to reveal to you, like, what's the strategy for this? This is where I want to be. This is my desire. How do we get there, God? Yeah. And I really believe that he will allow you to achieve that.
I love it. That's my heart. So I've got this set of 5 values that I live my life off of. I'm not going to give you all 5 of them. We don't have time. But number 1 is God first. Number 2 is others before self. And so when I'm living, success for me, right? It's faithfulness. Yeah. First to God, then to others, right? So for me, success is when I'm helping other people achieve success in their lives, right? So as a pastor, that's a huge part of what I do, right? But I find success when I help other people find success. And so that's just how I live my life. God first, others before self. Yeah, we'll leave that right there for people. I mean, listen. Man, I wish we had more time. It is literally 12 o'clock. Yeah, because I have
the question about like success and idolatry, the scriptures taken out of. We need to do I don't know.
All right, in 30 seconds. So scriptures out of context. Anything that talks about prosperity is not talking about money.
We need time to dissect that.
Okay, so there might be some that are talking about money too, but like ultimately it's I want your soul to prosper. Okay. So prosperity in scripture is not dollars and cents.
Wow.
And so it can be at times, but in general, no. And then what was the other one? Idolatry. Yes and no. So 100% pursuing success can become idolatry. It doesn't by default. So are you submitting it to God? When you don't, when the success is more important than your relationship with God, that's idolatry. So idolatry is just anytime you're worshiping something other than God.
Got it.
And so we can absolutely end up worshiping success.
Yeah.
Bad thing to do. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But still, you can still start a company, become a millionaire, and not be in an idolatrous relationship with it.
Yes,
and it is a fine line.
Yes, and as a testimonial, we'll end on this. I promise.
Poor Neo.
Poor Neo. Where's mom? So I still have my business. Like I still have my business. I still get to help authors put out books, but it's so much sweeter to take out the hustle. Yeah, and so. Listen,
There's a joy in it.
It's a joy. Like I get to have my business, serve my local church, and still pour into women and mentor them, and still have. I said still have time for David and Neil. Like they are first. I promise. But
sure.
I'm just saying. I feel like I get the best of all worlds.
Yep.
Because I surrendered to God.
Seek first the kingdom. And all these things will be added to you.
I'm about to like shout. Okay, let's end it now before we're here for another.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be back next week. I won't be back next week. I'll be in Turkey, but somebody will be sitting in this chair talking to you about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So great movie and some great principles in there that we'll be unpacking for you. See you there.
All right.